Hi, everybody. Douglas V. Gibbs here, Mr. Constitution. And I get a lot of questions about, having to wear the facial armbands. And so I'm taking a chance here because you talk about this topic on something like YouTube, and they like to strike down your videos. They like to kill it, but we'll take a chance anyway. I'll also be putting this video on BitChute, so if it disappears here, I'll have it on BitChute. One of the arguments is, well, gosh, business can say no shoes, no shirt, no service. Why can't they say, wear the thing over your face and, you're good, and welcome to the business. Otherwise, you can't come in. Why can't they do that? Or can they do that? Can they say, hey, you can't come in? Oh, and what about the Constitution? So first of all, let me lay some groundwork here. The U.S. Constitution was not originally designed to deal with businesses, privately owned businesses. It was government and laws. Second, and federal government has no authority to dictate, to demand, to expect you by law to wear anything on your face. However, they can make rules regarding their own properties. So if they want to say, hey, yeah, you want to come into such and such federal building, you've got to. Now, that said, in our country, there is something called public accommodation and reasonable alternative accommodations. And what that means is, because everybody's supposed to be treated equally. So that means if there's a law in place, everybody must be able to operate equally under that law. If there is if someone cannot operate equally under that law, then reasonable alternative accommodations need to be provided, especially when it comes to something that can be considered discrimination, such as medical reasons. There's a number of people, including yours truly, who can't wear facial armbands because of medical reasons. So should a business, or does a business have to operate on the assumption that if someone is not wearing one, they have a medical condition? And if that's the case, do they have to allow the person to come in, or do they have other options like providing reasonable alternative accommodations? The Americans with Disability Act essentially says that that while they can keep you from coming in, they have to provide reasonable alternative accommodations. If they cannot provide those alternative accommodations, then they have to let you in, regardless of what is going on there. And so, I've had stores tell me that, hey, we have curbside service, so we can keep you from coming in. And technically, based on the law, I'm not talking Constitution here, the law, they're right. Well, gosh, Doug, public accommodation, though, they're supposed, it's a public place, so all people are supposed to be able to come in publicly. Well, let's go back and attack this from a different angle. Rather than try to go after the businesses who are actually worse than the law sometimes, they don't believe there's any exceptions, let's go back to the law itself. Federal government has no authority, once again, to create law regarding facial armbands without unless it's regarding federal properties. Okay. So any federal mandate comes down and says you have to do this, or you have to get a jab, or whatever, unconstitutional. Federal government has no business, can't demand that. Then the 14th Amendment says that states, if they make laws, the states have to be equally applied to everyone. Equal protection clause, 14th Amendment, right? But what if it can't be equally applied? Because there are people who need accommodations, first of all. So if the law from a state says, nope, everybody's got to wear it, it's an unconstitutional law. It violates 14th Amendment's equal protection clause. As for the laws themselves, are they laws? Where are they coming from? From what I understand, especially here in California, these are edicts coming from the governors. And governors can't make law, just like the president can't make law. A presidential executive order is supposed to be instructions to the executive branch on how to execute the laws in question. But or it could be a proclamation. But the executive order by the president cannot have any force of law. There has to be legislation behind any law. Legislation has to be written. It has to go through a legislative body. The same is true at the state level. So if the governors are putting edicts out there without legislative foundation, it's not the law. It's a recommendation. Now, that said, the argument here is, yeah, but the legislature, because it's an emergency situation, gave him that power. The legislature can't give him that power. Every single state constitution I've looked at, and I've looked at over half of them, haven't gotten through all of them yet, but so far, every one I've looked at, in the section where it talks about the establishment of the legislative branch of the state, it says that the legislative power is vested in an assembly, in a state senate, or a state house of representatives, state senate, or whatever it says. But it uses the word vested. The word vested means that the power is legally transferred to this legislative body, but also it's irrevocable. The legislative body cannot give that power away. So the argument that they gave the governor legislative power during this emergency violates the state constitution. Look it up in your state constitution. If the word vested is there in the section that says that the legislature has received these powers, they can't give it away. And so therefore the governors are legislating in an unconstitutional manner, not because of the federal constitution, because of your state constitution. It's a recommendation. If they're going to put out a law, and see, they don't dare, because they know if it becomes law, it opens them up for all kinds of problems. It's a recommendation. In fact, when Governor Newsom here in California put his edicts out, he says that you will heed the edict. Well, the word heed means take into consideration. He knew it wasn't law. That's why he used the word heed. Take into consideration. You will consider his recommendation. So the legal aspect is being pushed, but it's not law, it's a recommendation. So how they make sure is through the businesses, which brings us back to no shirt, no shoes, no facial armband, whatever. Can a business do that? It's a private business. They can have their own rules. They can have their dress code and things like that. However, if it's seen as being discriminatory, then it could run afoul with the law. Goes back to the 14th Amendment. Everybody's supposed to be treated equally under the law, and also equally by businesses. Once again, I'm not necessarily sure that that's what was originally intended by the Constitution, but that's what's being practiced today. And so you have a business that says, you know what, you don't have that diaper on your face, so we're not going to let you in. So, well, I have a medical disorder, or I have a medical reason. They can't ask you what it is medically, but I can't wear one medically. The response should be either, okay, fine, come on in without the facial armband, or we have alternative accommodations for you. We have a curbside service. We have online delivery. It's free for folks like you, something like that. It has to be a reasonable alternative accommodation. Ultimately, and I'm not going to get into some of these arguments about whether or not things are effective or not. That's not the point of this. I'm looking at the constitutional and the legal aspect. In the long run, there really can't be laws requiring this. State constitution, ADA, reasonable accommodations, all that jazz. There really can't be laws requiring this. I want to say one last thing about this topic before I go. For those of you who are appalled by the fact that I don't wear a facial armband, it's a question of liberty. All of this comes down to liberty. All of this comes down to the principles that went in the Constitution, which is liberty. And liberty is based on choice. You assess the risk and you make your decision. That's supposed to be for the individual. Yeah, but Doug, in an emergency situation, liberties are suspended for the safety of the community. That's what I've been told. In fact, the 1905 Jacobson versus Massachusetts case essentially says that. The Chief Justice of the United States. That a state's allowed to require vaccines or something like that if it is, to protect the community. There's nothing in the Constitution or the state constitutions that really allow for that. And there has to be, once again, reasonable alternative accommodations. Ultimately, they really don't have the authority to do these things, to follow these policies, to demand businesses follow these policies. Once again, a business is a privately owned entity. So I'm not too hard on the employees because they're just doing what they're told. So how do you deal with it then? You vote with your dollars. You give your business to those who are in agreement with you. Don't go to big box chain store that says we're going to throw you out if you don't have an armband on your face. There are also other ways, of course. There are the people who put the armbands on their face, but they have wonderful messages on them, such as this armband is about as effective as Joe Biden, or things like that, which is also comical. But in the long run, from a constitutional standpoint, I really can't demand this. So my recommendation as a patriot is you go back to that thing about assessing the risk and making your decision on what your liberty wants you to do, and then practice it and get other people to practice it. If there's enough people practicing it and it overwhelms, or certain businesses start losing business because they're not willing to accommodate, things will change. Our activity, consumer activity and otherwise, can alter the course of these policies. Now, it's funny because I'm saying this, all of this, technically on the day after the day that California has decided they're no longer required, but then they also pushed back that date. So I'm not even sure. And my response is, I don't wear one anyway. And that's my decision. That's my liberty. Because liberty is what's supposed to rule this country, not a bunch of petty dictators. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. PoliticalPistachio.com, DouglasVGibbs.com. Donate to the cause. Subscribe to this page, this video page. Feel free to send me emails at constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com, constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com. Give me questions. I might do a video on it. And as always, united we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America. And my friends, God bless you. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.